Why play WoW? Feels kind of dreadful supporting Activision Blizzard. Because I want to play World of Warcraft. I understand that people often have the best intentions when they say, why are you doing this? You are supporting this. Because you know what? For the longest time, I didn't want to play WoW because I didn't want to support Activision Blizzard. That's just the truth. And then I started to question why I was or was not doing that. And I realized something. And I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad for this. When you make any kind of purchase or transfer your money into any specific, thing, area, place, company, individual, I'm about to die from that spider. What I was going to say was, I understand that there is, because I felt this way for a long time, there is a desire to not give your money to a system, process, person, any kind of community that you don't personally agree with. And you know what? I can respect that. I can get behind that. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, I agree with things that you disagree with, give me money, you're going to say, no, I don't want to do that. If that person comes up to you and says, hey, I agree with things you disagree with, I do things you don't like, but if you give me money, I will give you access to a program or a process or a game that you are going to like. Part of you wants to say, yeah, sounds good, I want the game. The other party wants to say, no, I still don't want to give you this money. Because even though I do want access to the game, I don't want to give you the money and support you. I get that. But what I started to realize, and this maybe this is me becoming bitter, maybe it's me becoming jaded. I am not the only link in that chain. I mean, don't fund things that support what you're against. That's very true. But I'm not the only link in the chain of where that money's going to. I could give my money to something that I 100% truly support. They could then give it to something that I don't support. I could choose to give my money to one person, to one shop, to one community, to one creator, and then that person chooses to give it to somebody else, and that person chooses to give it to somebody else, and then eventually the money has made its way around to the thing that I never actually supported. And therefore I have to ask the question. At some point, the buck does have to stop with me. At some point, it has to say, hey, I am not comfortable doing this. But I'm pretty sure that I've probably shopped at places that have paid their employees who have then gone on to give money to Blizzard. At what point do I have to say, hey, I'm not going to engage in any form of commerce or barter or exchange of money, because at some point the money that I give may make its way to a thing I disagree with. Now, there are, of course, balances to this. And people will say, oh, Josh, you're just engaging in moral relativism with it. But I have to then question, if I cannot control everything that I am connected to and how they are connected to then things. Sweet Abro says it's moral cope. I mean, I think you're reducing the word down slightly, but yeah, there is a potential of that. The idea that I don't want to engage in systems that I don't personally agree with. Okay, I get that. At what point do I have to say, I just want access to the product? Everyone who is watching this on Twitch is supporting Amazon. Everyone who is subscribing on Twitch is supporting Amazon. People are bumping up their numbers, they're making it more popular. People that watch on YouTube, they're supporting Google, and therefore supporting Alphabet, which is one step ahead of it. Most people are using this on a computer or a smartphone, which is on some level supporting a system I'm sure they disagree with. Now, I'm not going to come out here and say that I am holier than thou or morally superior to any of you. The idea is, if you engage with modern life in pretty much any way, you are forced to engage with systems that you are going to morally disagree with. Now, is that just me saying, actually, you do it too? Then, no, of course it isn't. I'm sure many of you guys own a smartphone. I'm sure you probably don't agree with child slavery. Is that part of the process of making a smartphone? Yeah, but you're so removed from that exact situation that it's not something that you specifically consider when purchasing a smartphone. Not many people have said, I am not going to purchase this because somewhere along the process something negative was done to create it. People are able to say no to a project that they disagree with, provided the project is right in front of them, provided there is one step between that. You do not want to give your money to this company because you've seen this company doing negative stuff. But you will happily give your money to another company because they do negative stuff far away. Which is why, unfortunately, it is very difficult to engage with modern life without at least on some point engaging with systems that you would morally disagree with. Now, does that make you a hypocrite? Does that make you morally indefensible? I wouldn't say it does. I would say that it is unfortunately part of the reality of living in the world that we have, and what people want to do whenever they say, I can't believe you're doing this, I don't want to support this, they're trying, and I actually agree with this, they're trying to take back a level of control over the situations that they're actually directly involved in. People want to feel in control of their lives. People want to feel that their choices and their decisions matter. And so what they're doing is they are saying, I am not going to do this because I do not support this directly. And I get that. I absolutely get that. And I agree with that. But at some point you do have to say, however, you do have to engage with some of the bad stuff at some point. People want to take control. You don't think that deeply when buying stuff. Just pay for what you need. That's it. Ignorance can be bliss in most cases. This comes back to the idea of, why are you supporting this thing? I thought you didn't support that. It's very strange that a lot of people... I took a stance against Blizzard for a long time. That's true. I straight up did do that. And people were like, oh yeah, fantastic. I'm really glad you're standing up against Blizzard. Nobody complained about streaming on Twitch, on Amazon. Nobody complained about Microsoft. No one was bothered about other stuff. But it was because it was one step removed and they were directly connected to it. That's where the emotions came into it. The idea of thinking globally and acting locally is a good thing to do. What was it that got me out of my self-proclaimed extreme political stance after university? Stoptimus, that is a great question. I wouldn't say that I was extremely political after university. I would say that I was extremely interested in activism. Younger people are more emotionally driven. People that have energy, people that have time, and people that have at least a desire to change the world for the better want to feel that they are part of a system that is doing the right thing. This is why so many activism places recruit at university. Because you have people that are ideologically extreme, you have people that still have a lot of energy, you have people that want to feel part of a community, and you have people that may not necessarily be the most discerning with what they do or do not get involved with. They just want to feel part of something. Which is why university is an absolute hotbed for recruitment of all types. They haven't got much to lose, they have a lot of time, and they want to feel that they're doing the right thing. And then I started, obviously, to get involved in all of this activism stuff. And the thing was, I actually still do, on some degree, believe in the ideology. I believe in the idea of wanting to make the world better. But I realized that it became more about ideological point scoring and less about doing things that were actually useful. And it became about performative... It was performative activism in the sense that it wasn't enough to care about something. You had to be seen to be caring about it the most. Because if you weren't seen to be caring about it the most, you weren't actually serious about it. But then I realized that some of these performative activism nature things were either actively harming or, potentially useless. It was virtue signaling. It was useless of what they were doing. So you would have university students who were against deforestation and against logging in the Amazon, which is an absolute fine thing to be against, who would then go and start their activism day by buying a Starbucks and then sitting around in a nice air-conditioned heated classroom and talking about buying lots of coloured markers so they could make a nice big pretty colour board to really get people's attention about this problem. And I said, hang on guys, there are things that we could do right now which would potentially make a really small impact and push toward the kind of idealistic future we're trying to look for. And then I realized that actually they didn't want to do any of the sacrifice, the personal sacrifice that is required to make any progress, even the tiniest amount of progress within these areas. They wanted to be seen doing the big grand gestures that they thought would make a big difference. And then I started, while I was involved in all of these groups, to look into the behaviors of cults and the behaviors of any kind of collectivist ideal and collectivist group, because I was beginning to see more and more of what I thought were tactics as opposed to genuine belief. And I think the moment that I realized that choices that we were given were actually potentially obfuscating the truth was this. I had a friend who was a Jehovah's Witness, and they didn't talk to me about religion much. And this is going to get obviously dangerous to talk about online. I'm not saying that anyone's religion is better than anyone else's. It's neither right nor wrong. This is just purely about the tactical choices that group was making. They were a Jehovah's Witness. And they told me about going door to door. I don't know if any of you have ever been in the Jehovah's Witnesses church, or is it the church of is it Latter-day Saints? Or is that Mormons? I always get them mixed up. But the Jehovah's Witnesses went door to door, knocking on the door, talking to people about the religion, asking to come in, asking to check. That's Mormons, Latter-day Saints. Okay, Jehovah's Witnesses are the ones that they go door to door and knock, and don't they? All that kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, here's a really weird thing when I was reading all of these books. Do you know what the success rate of door-to-door conversions is? Of actually knocking on someone's door and having them actually decide to convert. The conversion rate, given the best figures we have, is roughly 1%. And that made me question, because so many people hate when they do that. People have said, oh God, I hate it when the Jehovah's Witnesses knock on my door. And I thought, you're putting your congregation, you're putting your team, if you will, through a huge amount of hatred for a very low conversion rate. And then while I was reading this book about cults, it explained the point. The point is not the conversion rate. The point is to convince the people that are knocking on the doors that they are alone. The point is to enhance the us versus them dichotomy. The purpose of the door-to-door knocking is not to convert the people at the door. It's to convince the people doing the knocking that nobody else is there to support them. And they need to push further and further into the support of the church to find the friends, the family, and the support network that they need. It is not for the people being spoken to. It is for the people doing the speaking. It is a ritual. It is a process that ingrains the person who is doing the knocking further and further into the group, into the cult. Now, I'm not saying that Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult. I'm saying that it uses cult-like tactics. The first thing you want to do whenever you create any group of people is convince them that they are the in-group and everyone else is the out-group. And you do that by placing the in-group in a situation where the out-group will actively be hostile toward them. And that's when I realized that a huge amount of the activism that I was trying to get involved in was doing the same thing. I was wanting to support. People were going, oh yeah, there's this war going on in this country. Oh, this deforestation is happening. Oh, this is happening over here. This is terrible. That's terrible. I'm like, oh man, that's awful. What do we do? They're like, well, we've got to do all these big, big, grand gestures. But hey man, people are going to hate it, but we're just spreading the word. I'm like, no, the purpose seems to be the hatred. You want me to put myself into a position where other people who would potentially be a rather good ally dislike me, because then I have to rely more heavily on you. And that's when I started to realize a lot of this is not necessarily about changing the world. A lot of this seems to be about making my world revolve around you. That's when I started to realize, yeah, a lot of this is just that. You say, hang on, Snark Monkey, this is interesting. Activists aren't normal people. The average mundane person has no interest in being disruptive. All of them are cultish. Snark Monkey, I disagree. And the reason I disagree with this is an extremely important actual cult tactic. The first thing you don't want to do is have an us versus them dichotomy. As soon as you separate into everything of us versus them, you make it very, very, very hard to move from one group to another. I dislike it when human beings get described as monsters. Not because human beings don't do monstrous things, but because it's a way of emotionally distancing ourselves from the actions of humans. People go, oh my God, a monster did that. No, a human did that. A human being who was convinced or wanted to did that. That's a very important thing to do, is to remember that we are dealing with human beings. And if you say, oh, a normal person isn't going to do that, yes, they are. A normal person is absolutely capable of doing that, provided you say the right words to them, put them in the right situation, push the right buttons, and convince them that that is the way to do it. If you dehumanize people who are in groups that you do not agree with, you are showing the people in that group that they can never, ever leave it. If you close every door to leaving a group and returning to what we would consider to be civilized normal society, you are not necessarily protecting the civilized normal society. You are ensuring that that outgroup remains forever. Now, I'm not saying that we need to forgive everyone for everything. We are a bunch of fallible humans. It is extremely important that people, normal people, good, decent, human people, who have been pushed into one ideology or one extremism or another, understand that there is a route back out of that. Because if they understand that there is no route back out of that, what reason do they ever have to leave? And you are then continuing your own enemy's existence. That's the thing. Now, people hate it because we want to punish those that are on the other side of us. We want to feel that we are, dispensing punishment to those who are evil. But it's very important as well to understand that the side against you thinks it is right. People involved in that side think they are doing the right thing. It is possible to escape any extremist thought, but you must understand that you are escaping to somewhere. And it's horrible to think, I cannot believe I'm going to give this person who did stuff that I disagree with the benefit of the doubt. But if you don't do that, then what's the alternative? They just carry on in the situation you don't want them to be in? To link this back to cults, and to link this back to activism and ideology, I realized that a lot of the people that I was hanging around, activists, ideologists, political pundits, truth is, they were just lonely. That's kind of what it was. Joe says, are you suggesting criminals think they're doing the right thing? No, Joe. This is an example of what I said earlier, where when I talk about generalities, people want to know specifics. Am I talking that criminals think they're doing the right thing? As opposed to, morally right and morally wrong, they probably aren't considering it. They're probably thinking, this is the thing that I need right now. So in their mind, they are doing what's beneficial for them. I don't agree with it. I'm not sure they agree with it either. But they're doing what's beneficial to them at the time being. And people are obviously going to hear me say this and say, oh my God, I can't believe you support this or support that or support the other. We're talking about the general process. That's what we're talking about. And I realized a lot of people involved in these things were doing it for the sense of community. It wasn't necessarily the idea that they even fully believed in what they were saying or preaching. But they were doing it because they were lonely. Let's have a look at what Krenz is saying, because you've written something long with that. Seems important. You're causing trouble for the oppressors. Why are you trying to mince words here? Guys, here's another question. When you say, why are you trying to mince words here? Cred, let me ask you a genuine question. Do you understand that ending a sentence with the phrase, or ending a paragraph with the phrase, why are you trying to mince words, is often going to be met with a defensive nature? If you end a discussion or a sentence or a statement with something that makes the other person feel attacked, the first thing that person is going to do is defend themselves. And they're no longer defending themselves against an idea. They're now defending themselves against you. And if they have to defend themselves against you, that tells them one thing. You are the enemy. And as soon as you are the enemy, any position that you hold becomes the wrong position. This is one of the hardest points about talking to people. How dare you defend yourself from my attacks? You have to ask yourself sometimes, what's more important to you? Actually getting the person to agree with you, or attacking the person because you disagree with them? That's the horrible thing. Because if you want to just attack someone, and people have said to me, yeah, but why does someone who disagrees with me, why do they deserve my politeness? Why do they deserve my respect? Why do they deserve me being kind to them? And the answer is because you need to consider what you want the outcome of this to be. What do you want the outcome to be? Do you want the outcome to be that you feel righteous for defending your cause? Or do you want the outcome to be that they change their mind? Because if you want the outcome to be they change their mind, you need to make sure they don't see you as an enemy. They see you as someone to join, not someone to attack. Anger is very useful for physical fighting. It's not necessarily useful for debating. But remember how I said earlier that the point of knocking on doors in order to attempt to convince people to join your religion is not actually designed to convert people. Instead, it's designed to convince the people doing the knocking that they themselves are the oppressed minority. We can do the same thing with online debates, and this is why I really dislike online debates. Cred says, historically, activists have been oppressed peoples. You're separating them for no reason. Cred, do you want to be seen as someone who is benefiting from the weakness of history, or do you want to be someone who actually brings people into your cause? Because if you want someone to join your cause, the very first thing that person has to do, this is the most basic, fundamental, foundational level thing, they have to like you. Because if they don't like you, they're not going to join you, no matter what. If someone does not like you, then they will see everything you stand for as something to be against. Even if they agree with it, this is the thing, even if they actively agree with what you think, they will push back against it on principle of not liking you. And that is a horrible thing to do. Now consider this. This is why I tend to push this. Have any of you ever watched an online debate? I'm sorry if you have. The purpose of an online debate is I'm less interested in people liking me in order to bring them over. Well, in that case, you're not actually that bothered about the point. If you are not bothered about giving your ideology every possible advantage to make strides into the world, then you're defending your ego more than the change in the world you want to see. Being nice is a tactic, but being on the right side of history has been a better one. I am not nice to bigots. I also don't judge those who are in oppressed groups for lashing out at bigots or fascists. Cred, I completely agree. In theory, I absolutely agree with you. You and me are on the same side here. But I think you're placing defending your ego over trying to live in a world that you actually want to make. The material reality shifts people's attitudes more than being nice to them. Totally disagree. There are many people who vote against their own self-interests because people they like tell them to. There are many people who will do something that is personally harmful to them because they have been convinced it's the right thing to do by people they like. But of course, we are all emotional creatures. Do people vote against their interests? Yes, but in the course of history, people eventually get to the point of a revolt. Cred. Again, I agree. And the people that lead the revolts tend to be the people that everyone else likes or are capable of doing it. We're also not necessarily looking at the idea of, large-scale mass revolts. We're talking about moment-to-moment, individual-to-individual human connection. You don't need to be nice to bigots, but you have to at least consider the idea that if a bigot hates a specific trait or a specific demographic, and someone with that trait or from that demographic is a dick to them, you have confirmed their own bias. It sucks to say, hey man, this guy hates you, but maybe if you show a little kindness, he may start the process of starting to not hate you as much. I hate that as well. I'm thinking, why do I need to be nice to someone who's going to be a dick to me? Okay, well, the answer is there is only one possible route out of this. The only possible route is that the person that has already decided they hate you decides to ask themselves a question of, but why? We need to find that way to make them think, but why? More. Now, not everything is an equivalent exchange. That's totally true. And if someone comes up and goes, hey, I hate you because of XYZ, and I turn around and go, yeah, well, you're a dickhead. They're like, oh, I knew you'd say that. I knew you'd be mean to me because you're an XYZ. Okay. So what you've just done there is confirmed their own bias. They thought that you were going to be something. You then did something. They then say, well, I knew that. Knew that all along. Annoyingly, the only way to prove people wrong is to do the thing that's hardest to do, which is swallow your own ego and your own pride and try and be at least somewhat nice to someone that hates you. And we've all been that person. We've all been that person at some point, man. It's usually true for cult-like groups because they're encouraged to think in a cookie-cutter way. Absolutely. Some of the stories that we read about people who have managed to convince people who were on what many people will refer to as the wrong side of history are normally people just being kind to them. But many people that want to build a world that is genuinely better struggle with one of the few things that would really help them, which is being able to talk to people in a way that people like being talked to. I know so many people who have their hearts in the right place, but unfortunately, they will never get the mass support they need because they're just not able to talk to people in the way they need to talk to. It's sad. It's really sad. Because, you know what? The person is believing the right thing, thinking the right thing, doing the right thing, but the one thing they're not able to do is convince the person that dislikes them they should like them. And then you just entrench the negativity more. To link this back to online debates, do you know what really helps an in-group gel together? A shared enemy. A shared enemy is one of the most powerful things you can have in the creation of any kind of human society. No matter how big or how small that society or that culture is, you give people a shared enemy, god damn, you've got teamwork right there. I would say, and again, correct me if you think I'm wrong on this, I would say that Asmongold and Hassan have relatively extreme opposite ends of the spectrum as a viewer base. Correct me if you think I'm wrong on that. I'm not endorsing one or the other. I'm saying that you've got Hassan on one side, you've got Asmongold on the other. And I'm saying that one of the most powerful things that each of them has in order to galvanize their own viewer base as being in the in-group, in the right, is the other viewer base. They see each other as the enemy. You ever asked yourself why they're both represented by Knight Media Agency? Because Knight Media Agency knows the one thing that's going to hold a society together is a shared enemy. And they are perfectly balancing each other out as shared enemies. Because it makes big money. People will say, oh, are you red or are you blue? All the big agencies are green. Real winner, ad companies. Which is why what I am trying to say is that if you have a belief system or something that you hold dear or something that matters to you a lot, and you would like to be able to convince people who are against that to come and join you, the worst thing you can do is convince them that you are their enemy, because then they have no reason to ever come and believe in you, which sucks. And of course, that means that you have to be the one that's taking the risk. You have to be the one that's saying, well, you know what? You're being a dick to me, man, but I'm going to be kind to you. You've said something, you've done something that I disagree with, but I'm going to be kind to you. You can only control how you treat other people, and if there is one possible route to the victory that you see, you kind of just got to go with that. And you know what? There are going to be people in the chat right now who are going to start defending and arguing with other people based on what other people have said. We are already seeing it. But ask yourself the question before you keep typing the messages. Are you trying to convince someone that you are right? Or are you trying to beat someone into submission that you are right? If you guys want to have a conversation like this, take it into Discord DMs. You don't need to have it on Twitch. Do not try to explain in this chat why the person that you do or do not agree with is right or wrong. Won't work. Please don't do that. If you want to have that conversation with someone, because you genuinely think there's value in having it, go into that conversation. But this is very important. If you go into that conversation with the idea that you are going to convince someone that they are wrong and you are right, you must enter into it with the expectation that you are willing to be convinced you are wrong as well. If you don't do that, you are not looking for a conversation or a debate. You are looking to convince someone that you are right at all costs. Before you go seeking revenge, first dig 2 graves, as they say. If you are going to want to engage someone in a discussion about something because you think they are wrong, do not have that discussion unless you are willing to be convinced that you are wrong. And Cred has just typed, yeah, I'm not willing to be convinced that genocide is good. Cred, I agree with you there. Absolutely, genocide is pretty bad. I know that's a big hot take for me to say, but Cred, I think I need to point something out. You also don't want to go into a debate with the intention to use what we call hyperbole. And hyperbole is the idea of going to the ultra extreme of one end or another and using that example of why you should not be willing to concede any ground in the middle. I completely agree that genocide, a little bit bad. I don't think any actual conscious human being who is worth talking to or respecting in any way disagrees with that. But I also think if that is the first thing that you then jump to as, actually, I'm not willing to change my mind because of this, then you are proving that you are willing to go to the most extreme examples to never change your standing. And unfortunately, that is the kind of attitude that I have seen from people who are deep into the activism front, and they use that specific example to say why they will never change and why they will never give any ground. If you want to have an actual, genuine, good faith discussion with someone, you really need to be able to approach that conversation in good faith. If someone is that extreme in supporting something negative, then yeah, you don't need to engage with them at all. That's fine. You don't need to. But you also have to ask yourself the question, are you engaging with people who are willing to change their mind? Because if you're not engaging with people who are willing to change their mind, why are you engaging with them? Are you just trying to find the most extreme examples who are never going to agree with you and argue with them? Or are you going to try and find people who maybe haven't been convinced one way or the other, who are maybe leaning to one side that you wouldn't necessarily agree with, who you want to show an alternative to? Because you're not going to get the hardcore enfranchised of one side to come over and agree with you. But you might be able to get someone who's, just questioning. You might be able to get someone who's unsure. But if you walk up to them and start attacking them because they don't immediately agree with you, you know what you've done? You've pushed them to the other side. It's very, very important to actually ask yourself, what do I want from this? Human beings are totally capable of change, but they also have to be convinced that changing is the right thing to do. And if someone feels attacked or humiliated or humbled, the first thing most people do is get defensive. And I think if we're all honest, that's what we would all do. We would all just immediately get defensive. As soon as we feel that someone's there to attack us, those barriers go up, man. When those barriers go up, it's hard to get them to come down. If someone feels listened to and seen, because remember, most people are just lonely. That's when it's much easier to convince someone. And if you're more focused about convincing yourself that you're right and someone else is wrong, you're going to run out of allies very quickly. This is why there are entire discussions, entire topics about how to deliver information across. Yeah, Techless, I agree. Techless, let me ask you a genuine question, because I'm not going to bring up what you've written, because you are right. Okay, Techless, do you think that that is a discussion that we can have civilly with 3,000 people on Twitch, given you've seen how Twitch acts? Do you think that is genuinely something that is safe for us to do? Do you think that's not going to devolve into a mudslinging match immediately? It's very important to work out that sometimes you need to have a civil discussion within a civil place about a matter you can actually resolve, not something that is immediately going to start a massive argument. Jen, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying that you need to step back, look at the actual situation and say, is this going to solve a problem right now? That's the danger. That's what we have to curate sometimes. There is a time and a place for everything. And if you think that Twitch chat is the time and the place for every debate ever, then you are more bothered about simply winning than you are actually kind of enacting meaningful change. Personally, I find it very important to be able to want to change the world into a better thing. But if I'm more bothered about being... This is, again, the nature of the performative. Am I more bothered about wanting to change the world and being seen to change it? Do I want to be seen to be doing the right thing or do the right thing? You've got to be mindful of the fact that you have to consider your audience when discussing pretty much anything. And it's dangerous whenever I have to ask myself, hang on, let's just take a moment here. Who is going to be responding to this? Who is going to have their input? And how are they going to respond? Because if I don't consider that, I'm just pretty much throwing in the argument grenade and then leaving. Do I think that streaming WoW has affected me mentally? I don't think it's been WoW itself. I think it's been the discussions that have happened around the WoW streams. Shay's just gone, so, wet ghosts. Do they exist? These are the conversations we have to have. Consider this. This is the most important thing for me. I don't want to tell you what you need to think or believe. I want to give you the skills so that when you have the conversation with people about what you both think and believe, you can come to a much more mutual, much safer conclusion that hopefully pushes us toward a world where more people are able to have those types of conversation. I don't want to tell you you must think this or you must believe this. I do want to say if you're going to have a conversation with someone about this, consider having the conversation in this way. Consider approaching it in this way. Consider changing in this way if you're willing to. I would like to give people the skills to have the conversation, not tell them how it needs to end. Because I think, and this might sound naive, I think in general, a lot of people are good people. I think we are exposed to a level of evil because we simply have access to social media more. I think we see the negative in the world. I think we see people being bad. I think we see that all the time because of the news, because of the media, because of it being shoved down your throats all the time. But for most people that I've met, I think most people are good people. And I think most people, good people, when given the skills to have the productive conversations, do end up coming to positive, productive outcomes. Most people that you meet are just living their lives. They're the good, silent majority. They're living their lives, they're loving their families, they're going to work, they're doing their hobbies, they're engaging in whatever society they want to engage with to a level that they're comfortable with. They're telling jokes, they're cooking food, they're enjoying whatever holidays they want to enjoy together. Most people, good people. But sometimes good people just don't understand how to talk to each other. So if I can give one good person the ability to have a conversation with another good person, maybe those two people don't see perfectly eye to eye. Maybe they're, 51-49. Maybe there's a slight imbalance there. What I don't want, this is super important, I don't want a small imbalance to be brought up in conversation. And then because of the lack of conversational skills, it becomes a big imbalance. And then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you have two extreme people. Two people who were probably good. Two people who probably want to be good. Two people who didn't know how to talk to each other, who have convinced themselves the other person is an enemy. That's what I would rather have. I would rather good people have the ability to understand how to have a conversation instead of defaulting to it being a massive mudslinging match and a massive argument. A lot of people argue, but they're saying the same thing. That is a great way of looking at it. Because these people are arguing because they don't feel agreed with. They don't feel seen. I want people to be able to talk to people in a way that comes to a mutual conclusion instead of making two enemies. Two good people should not start making enemies of each other because there are more than enough evil people in the world. Two people violently agreeing with each other. Yeah, they both want the same thing, but they want to be seen as the one that wants the thing the most. You know what? True, 10, that's spot on. How many people here, I mean, you could admit this, I'm not going to have a go at you guys. This is genuinely a safe space to discuss stuff. And when I say safe space, I don't mean there's no consequences. I mean, we're not going to make people feel bad for admitting weaknesses. How many people, especially when they were younger, this is maybe a university thing, just sucked at communication? You were just really bad at it. You didn't talk very well, you didn't express your feelings well, you didn't help other people understand you well. Maybe when other people talk to you, you can't get it across. Have you ever felt frustrated that somebody else just doesn't get it? Because chances are, maybe they could understand it, but you need to explain it in a way that they get. People, when I say to someone, you have to explain it in a way that they get, people get irritated at me. They say, oh, so, I'm dumb. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. No. You understand it perfectly. But you now need, your job, if you want someone else to understand you, your job is not to explain it to them in a way that you understand. It's to explain it to them in a way they will understand. And that might be completely different to the way that you understand it. A good teacher is not just someone that knows a lot of stuff. A good teacher is someone who knows how to get other people to know a lot of stuff. If I understand a concept and yet I can't explain it to you in a way that you understand, I need to work out how you learn. There is a level of translation that's going on between the information that I have and the information that you are receiving. You once said to a person after trying to explain something 10 times, I didn't have the ability to explain it. Soccer? That's fair. If that's something that you've noticed, that's a totally valid thing to say to someone. You need to be able to give them the information in the way they understand it, because people learn in different ways. The ability to truly understand would be a great ability society could master. I agree, wrong way, great thing. Whether you agree or disagree, you understand, you get it. You can understand a concept and still say, I disagree with that. That's okay. But I think understanding and communication as a whole are things that we do seem to be lacking, which is something that I try and push. Right, we have handed in 3 quests. Fantastic. And some people, and again, it all comes back to this, guys. Some people just want to be angry. Some people like being angry. It sucks to realize, but they just straight up like the anger. They want to be annoyed. Some people want to just be irritated. And normally that irritation, at least from what I'm able to tell, that irritation normally just comes from a level of loneliness. Don't know if you guys feel that as well, but it's the classic example is the can I talk to the manager Karen lady. These people are just straight up lonely. They need to be validated. They need to be seen. No one listens to them and they want to be listened to. And they don't feel that anyone is listening to them. Bad attention is better than no attention for a lot of people. That's why the kid in your class always messed around to get attention, because that was the only way that anyone focused on them. You're the opposite end. You can try as much as I want and as much as I can, but for others it's natural to them. Yeah, it's different for everyone. Every human being is different, and we can talk about the general wants of a society, but ultimately we have to come down to the individuals. Here's an example. This is an example that I use to explain how you can sometimes be exposed to what a society wants, and you can ingrain that as expected. And then you can meet an individual who wants a different thing, and you can feel almost wrong or called out. I was playing Magic the Gathering many years ago with a couple of friends of mine, and after shuffling your deck to start the game of Magic the Gathering, you hand your deck to your opponent to cut the deck and then hand it back to you. It's more of a formality. We're not trying to cheat in a casual game. But I handed my deck to my opponent, and they grabbed it and they riffle shuffled it as if it was a poker deck. And I said, hey man, please don't do that. There's some relatively expensive cards in there. Please don't riffle shuffle like that. And their response was, they're just cards, man. And they did it again. And I kind of took them off and I said, I have directly asked you to not do something, and you directly did it. Why? I wanted an answer. And they went, they're just cards, you know, other people don't mind me doing this, they're just cards, I'm just going to do this. I do it to my cards, I do it to their cards, I do it to his cards, you know, everyone's fine with this. And I had to explain to him, I don't care what everyone is fine with. I, as an individual, as your friend, am asking you to treat my property in a certain way. And you have deliberately not done it in that way. That is a lack of respect for me. You are placing what you want and what society as a whole that you are familiar with is comfortable with over what I have asked you to do. And if you're going to do that, then I'm just not going to hang out with you. And I think you will meet a lot of people in your life who tell you that what you want doesn't matter because other people are fine with it. Because other people are okay with it. How did they answer? They got a little bit embarrassed because I just called them out directly. You will meet people who tell you that you should be okay with something because other people are okay with that thing. And what they are saying to you is they have already decided what level they are comfortable at. You need to adapt to them. And you are then able to decide whether you wish to continue a friendship with that person or not. Entirely up to you. You have that power. Personally, if I explain something to someone and they tell me that I should be okay with other things, I just don't need to continue hanging out with that person. It's not what I see as respectful. But the thing is, when you call people out for their bad behavior, especially that you don't particularly agree with, they get defensive and they tell you why their behavior was okay. This is the first thing people do. As soon as you say, hey, don't do that, I don't want you to do that, I don't like that, the first thing they will do is tell you why it's fine. They will correct you on your own opinion, on your own request. You're like, hey man, don't do that. They're like, oh, it's okay, don't worry, I can do it because of given reasons. That to me sucks. That to me feels disrespectful. It's all based on wording, absolutely. Do I plan on selling my cards or just to use the point to add invalid weight to your argument? If they know you will never sell your cards and acted from that position, like-minded, does it matter what I choose to do with my cards in the future? Are you asking me if I plan to sell my cards, therefore they should not have done that? That's genuinely a really interesting point. Like-minded has just typed a great comment relating to my Magic the Gathering story. Do you plan on selling your cards? Or did you just use the point to add invalid weight to your argument? If they know you will never sell your cards, and they acted from that position, like-minded, are you saying that if I don't plan to sell my cards, it shouldn't matter if they treated the property in a way that may damage it? Are you implying that if I didn't intend to sell them, I shouldn't have been bothered if they chose to riffle shuffle them or not? They are just cards, they don't count as property. Yes, Warbringer, they do. That's how ownership works. Does whether I intend to sell them in the future or not play into this? Would I still be within my right to say, I don't want you to treat my property in this way? Because whether I plan to sell them or not, I may not personally wish them to get damaged in that way. Are you saying that something that I may or may not do in the future is more important to you than something I'm asking you to do out of respect right now? Are you implying that my future decisions are more important to your treatment of me than my present requests? Because it's very strange that I say, please don't do something, and your response is, well, I'm going to do it anyway because it's fine. And I say, no, please don't do that because these are my things and I'm requesting you don't do that. And you say, okay, tell me what you're going to do in the future so I can work out whether I should be allowed to do that or not. If someone asks you as a friend to treat their property in a certain way, they don't need a reason to ask you to treat it in that way. They don't need to justify to you why they are making that request. You answered my question with a question. I'm implying the reality of the situation affects the reality of the situation. You said, please don't do something because the because was not really why. Oh, so you're just arguing for the sake of arguing. I see. It doesn't matter whether, okay, I'll be much more direct with you, like-minded. What I choose to do with my property in the future is absolutely irrelevant to you based on how I'm asking you to treat it right now. That's the straight answer. If I ask you to treat my property in a certain way, then I expect you, as a friend and as an adult, to treat it in that way. Like-minded, so say that to that person. Yeah, I did. That's the conversation that we're having here. I did do that. Valid, you should say that. You're an idiot, I got it. It took me a while to get there, but I'm caught up. We're on the same page. I'm picking up what you're putting down, which is dumb. My bad. We got there together in the end. Sorry. Sometimes the problem is that some people are professional idiots, and I am just a gifted amateur. So it takes me a while to understand how smart within the idiocracy sphere I'm dealing with. Teaching how to speak to people and you fall back to being an idiot. Like-minded, the thing is that you are a professional at this. Just a gifted amateur. I'm trying. I'm asking someone to treat my property with the respect that I ask for it to be treated with, and you're saying, yes, well, we need to consider what you're going to do with it in the future. No, you don't. It's okay. I enjoyed the Like-minded saga. That was fun for a bit. God, this is so bad, says Red. You know when people message me and say, oh, that person's just trolling, do you ever hang out on this stream and realize they're not trolling, they genuinely think that? I try and approach people in good faith right up until that person deliberately kind of misattributes or misunderstands. Deliberate misunderstanding is the irritating thing. the so what you're saying is, and then like a deliberate misunderstanding of it. This is one thing that I'd like to judge people on. And I don't like to judge people a lot, but I like to judge people on this, okay? No is a complete sentence. You do not need to justify a no with anything. And I learned this because my mum and dad were terrible for it. And when I, as a child, said no, there needed to be a justification. And as I got older, I realized there doesn't. No is a complete sentence. Hey, do you want to come out drinking with us? No. Oh, why? Okay, so I've said no, and now I straight away. But if you do justify it, does it matter what you say, light-minded Lamau? No. If someone asks you to do something and your answer is no, the rest of society then in general expect a justification for why you've given the answer no. But not many people expect a justification for the answer yes. Do you want to do this? Yes. Why? Well, because it sounds fun. Okay, that's a good enough reason. Do you want to do this? No. Why? Because it doesn't sound fun. That's a good enough reason. There are some people who are incapable of understanding that no, without a justification, is fine. That's okay. Doesn't need a follow-up. And Warbringer has just said, this is a dumb take. Why? Because you ask someone a question, they say no, and you think you deserve a reason for why? Because what it's normally saying is, that is not the response I wanted you to give, justify it so I can understand why you gave it. That's what it means. The answer you've given is incorrect in what my model of you was going to say. Justify why you've given that answer so I can see if I accept it. Sometimes you don't want to do it. Totally valid answer. Toby, I agree. Actively losing brain cells from reading the chat. Of course. Straight up. Now, context, of course, matters. Hang on, Light-Minded continues. The saga carries on. You gave a reason without being asked why, and the reason you gave had nothing to do with the actual why. Your friend didn't give it weight because it was not your point. If I say to my friend, don't do that, and they say, no, it's fine, I'm going to do it anyway, they do not need a justification for don't do that. If it's my property and I say don't do that, your response is, okay, I won't. Anything else is socially inept. If I hand you my property and you treat it in a certain way and my response is don't do that, your follow-up is not why. You do not need a reason or they don't need a reason why. If it's your property and you're asking it to be treated in a certain way, then their response is, and should be, okay, I will do that. It was though. No, it wasn't. I'm explaining that their reaction was, it's fine, I'm going to do it this way, don't worry about it, everyone else is fine with it. Did you follow the story wrong? Maybe you didn't get the story correctly. Do you want me to retell it? I'll retell it, because Light-Minded maybe wasn't paying attention. So I handed a friend of mine a Magic the Gathering deck to cut the deck, and he picked it up, and he riffle shuffled the deck. And I said, please don't do that. Expensive cards, don't do it. I'll totally grant their actions were unjustified, but I'm talking about the conversation you had with them. Right. So the conversation I had with them was effectively me saying, I don't care what other people are okay with. I'm not okay with that. And they're my cards. So don't do it. Context of that matters. Because what my friend was proving at that point was that other people that have allowed something in the past was more important to him than what I was asking him to do right then. Is he still your friend? We don't hang out as much anymore. People do all the time on Twitch. They break a rule, you tell them, oh, but I was justified. Whenever you call someone out for shitty behavior, the first thing they do is explain their shitty behavior. If you call someone out for shitty behavior, it's okay for them to say, you know what, you're right, my bad. I shouldn't have done that. I was wrong, I'm sorry. And I've done that before. I've been on the receiving end of that. And you know what? It sucks. It absolutely sucks for someone that you want to be friends with to call you out on your bad behavior. Because the first thing you have to do is sit back and go, was I in the wrong? But asking the was I in the wrong is itself not necessarily the most important thing to ask. Because you're asking, was I in the wrong? When what you should be asking is, have I just upset my friend? If I do something that I think I'm justified for, but it upsets my friend, and they say, hey, please don't do that, that upset me, I have to ask what I value more. Doing something that I think I'm right for, or understanding that my friend is upset because of my actions. And if I understand that my friend is upset because of my actions, I would rather apologize to my friend and reflect on my actions. Because maybe after reflecting, I realize, you know what, my friend was wrong. My friend was incorrect. My friend should not have asked me to do this. That was too much. That was not the right thing. Maybe I will discover that. But in the moment, I would rather kindness toward my friend than defense and justification toward me. My point was only that when you said why, you are saying something your answer should be the actual reason you're saying. You should state why person A, saying you treat your friend, most people, if you come away from that point with being upset, with being stupid, that's on you. Right, like, you didn't explain it to me in a way that I understood in that case, which means that's on me and you. But I'll take it entirely onto me, that's fine. If a friend of mine asks me why, what they're saying is they do not take my request seriously without understanding. They treated my property in one way. I said don't do that, they said why. My point was they do not need to ask why. Because if they ask why, what they're saying is, I will consider treating it that way again, unless you justify to me right now why I shouldn't. Their answer needs to just be, okay. And if their answer is, it's fine, don't worry about it, I've done this, 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 and this, they are explaining to me. So you didn't understand my point and called me stupid in front of 3,000 people while teaching them how to talk to people to gain understanding. Yes, I did. Let's scroll back up and have this conversation again. And if I'm wrong, I will apologize. Hang on. We're scrolling back up. Is there a way that I can only see what message one person has sent? If there is, let me know, because I'm not entirely sure how to do that on Twitch. We can have it again. We can have the conversation again. You know what? That's fair of you. If I have insulted you, and if I have offended you with that, then I apologize. That was wrong of me. The reason I started referring to you as stupid was because, let me see if I can see the messages you sent. There we go. Ah, gotcha. Oh, lovely. Okay. The first message you sent said, do you plan on selling your cards, or did you just use the point to add invalid weight to your argument? If they know you will never sell your cards and acted from that position, ellipsis. If you don't plan on selling your cards, then they are just cards. They were in the wrong, thinking you wouldn't freak out. Right, so like-minded, your input to this discussion actually came from the kind of the basis, the foundation that what my property is matters based on what my friend chose to do. You approached it saying, well, actually, my friend's actions can be justified based on what my property is, the value of it, and what I might choose to do with it in the future. By saying, do you plan on selling your cards, ? Or did you use the point to add invalid weight to your argument? It matters why you said it. Are you asking because that's why I brought up the value of the cards? The value isn't relevant with this. I was explaining the misunderstanding, not stating they were correct. You were asking if the value was relevant. That's what it is. His view isn't just disrespectful, he missed the point. Do you mean my view toward you? They are expensive still matters even if you didn't plan to sell? Absolutely. They are something that I've purchased, that I see value in, that I find joy from, that I don't want to see damaged. Now, if I've upset you and offended you, I apologize. Straight up, unequivocally. No justification, no reason, no but after that. Shouldn't have done that, and I apologize. And now I want to be able to understand you. I want to be able to connect, and I want to be able to see where your point was and why I said that. Your friend considered your point and acted on it. They shouldn't need to consider. They should simply decide. He didn't, my friend, this is the point that I'm trying to get. My friend didn't consider it. They didn't act on it. When they started riffle shuffling and I said, please don't do that, the first response they had to me was, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Other people are okay with this. They're fine with it. They're just cards. It's okay. I do it to my own cards. And then they did it again. Do you not understand that's the story? They did something. I asked them not to do it. And then they explained to me why what they did was fine. And then they did it again. They riffle shuffled that deck twice. That's the point of the story. They did action A. I told them not to do action A with my property. They told me that I was incorrect. They do action A with other people's property, with their property, with other things. They did it again. And then we had the conversation where I explained why they are placing their understanding of other people's boundaries over my directly stated boundary of not doing it. Are you following the story now? It's okay. The action of doing it again was totally wrong. I agree with you on their actions, and I never spoke onto it. Your point of telling the story was to explain how to communicate with people to help them get your point of view. Yeah, I was. So why does you putting input of the do you plan to sell your cards matter? You know what, Light? This is a very important conversation, and we're going to have to do the teacher thing now of saying, write this down and send me a message, and we will continue to have this conversation offline. That's the best thing to do. I'm going to run around, play the rest of the game, but if this matters to you, I want you to feel seen, I want you to feel valued. Write it down, message it to me, we'll have the conversation. All my stuff is open. This is an example of one student disrupting the lesson too much, but that student still having value. So write it down, send me a message, we'll keep having the conversation. I want you to feel seen, I want you to feel valued, and you know what? I don't want you to be called stupid. I think maybe we both misunderstood, and I think it's important for us both to be able to connect with that. I jumped the gun on calling someone stupid, and I think the reason I did that was because you were portraying behavior that I have seen from people who simply wish to get a reaction as opposed to have a conversation. And if you do want to genuinely have a conversation that we have both misunderstood, we can have that. But unfortunately, there was a huge amount of emotion and of overreaction and of behavior that I have seen, unfortunately, come from people that I think value the insulting more than the conversation. Never insulted, tried to help. I triggered your PTS. Understandable from a streamer. PTS? Not familiar with the acronym. Parent-teacher syndrome. Gotcha. Post-teacher syndrome. No, because he could have meant something different. You know what? This is irritating to me, and this is actually quite saddening. I was genuinely willing to have a conversation with the dude, but the fact that you had to end the sentence with, I triggered your PTS. I don't think that I've gone through anything in my life that would give me post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think that the people that have suffered from that remarkably debilitating condition would feel it insulting if I said I had. I think it's a real shame that I genuinely was willing to have a conversation with you. And I was willing to engage in what I hoped was good faith. But I think it ended with the idea of, hey, we'll have this conversation. Sorry that I triggered that. Was that delivered in a respectful way or not? Because I genuinely can't tell. Like, at some point, I want you to feel that you are respected here. Inju's like, it sure is a weekend stream. It is definitely a weekend stream. We are all here on the week. It's a Sunday. Oh, hang on. I triggered your PTS. Understandable from a streamer. Right. Gotcha. So now you're reducing the position that I'm in relation to you. Oh, this is a shame, man. Like, I was willing to have a chat, genuinely. This is no Tuesday stream. This is the Sundayest Monday. It's a shame that my first impression was correct. I genuinely didn't want it to be. This sounds stupid, but I really didn't want my first impression to be correct. I hope that we can give people the benefit of the doubt. And then, unfortunately, those people just tend to prove you right quite a lot. Which I think is a shame. He was arguing for the sake of arguing. That's true. You know what? Totally not Noodle. He was arguing for the sake of arguing. No, he wasn't totally not Noodle. How dare you think that? What do you have to say for yourself now? Totally not Noodle. I'm just choosing a new target. We're cycling around. Not Noodle, just come back. Just call me a poop face or something. People that joke about, oh, you're a streamer, you've got PTSD. I've known people that have genuinely struggled with a lot worse than that, so I don't want to be out here reducing their struggles because of what I have to do. I have to sit and play Warcraft all day and talk to Twitch chat. This is not the worst job in the world. I like to think that I'm trying to be an activist for the support for men's mental health. And when I say that, I don't mean that women's mental health doesn't matter. I mean that I don't think that I'm the champion that cause needs. Because I think the most ironic thing that we could ever have for women's mental health is me going, move out of the way, women. You don't know what you're doing. You need a man to do this. That would be quite ironic, wouldn't it? To me go, Josh, do you support women's mental... Josh, do you support women's mental health? I do. Why? Because they're not good at doing it themselves. You know? They need me to come in there and sort that out for them. Can you imagine? That's why I tend to push the whole men's mental health thing. And then whenever I chat to guys that are struggling, the first thing they do is point out how their job is harder than mine. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not denying that, but we don't need to turn this into the suffering Olympics. We don't need to turn it into the problem. Thanks, Josh. I always knew I couldn't do it on my own. You know what? It reminds me of one of the funniest lines in... Do you guys ever watch Flight of the Conchords? There's a conversation in Flight of the Conchords halfway through where they go, yeah, my dad was a feminist. He very much believed in equality. And the other person goes, oh, was your mum a feminist? And he goes, oh, no, my dad wouldn't allow that. Which I think was brilliant. It's such a clever twist on that line. My dad wouldn't allow that. Oh, God. You know what? It's really, really stupid, genuinely, how many people I have met who really do believe that women are incapable of doing things. Am I a feminist? I mean, yes. Like, the idea of equality sounds pretty cool. I'll go with that. I don't necessarily want feminism to turn into misandry and misogyny. No, Josh, hang on, I have to ask Inju. That's a good point. I'm not allowed to make that call. I must put it to the Council of Women. You don't have to out yourself on Twitch if you don't want to, obviously. But I will have to put that to the council. I think that women get to make that choice for me. That's how much of a feminist I am. I don't get to decide that. I think I realized that I was a feminist when I would rather play Tanya in Command & Conquer than Boris. I think Tanya's just better. Sorry, but she just is. She does more damage, she's cheaper, she's faster, she has 2 cool Uzis, and she was just better in the live-action series that was, taking part before the missions. That, to me, is pretty much my basis for feminism. Did you just call a woman cheaper? Oh, no, that's a fucked up. We've got to... Quick, hide the council. Oh, dear. Shouldn't have said that, should I? Quick, to the oubliette with him. Oh, no. It's over for me now. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm kind of okay. Like, if women try to cancel me, that's okay. They're just not as good at it as men are. That was funny. You have to admit, that was a little bit funny right there. Shep, I'm sorry. That is an incredibly funny line. Shep just wrote one of the funniest things I've seen in the chat. And that is, are women still going for the lower paid jobs? Like female doctor? I'm sorry, it's funny because it's horrifically true. Oh, sorry if you just laughed. That is quite funny. Like, it's horrible and we're all saddened, but it is quite funny. Oh, God. An old, politically incorrect man walks into a bar. Now, the man is blind, but he thinks he's quite funny. And he says to the bartender, hey, you want to hear a joke about blondes? And the bartender leans over and says, before you tell that joke, I should let you know that I am a blonde woman. Sitting to the side of you is a blonde woman kickboxing champion. And just behind her is a blonde woman who has worked in the military for 7 years. Now, are you sure you still want to tell that joke? And the man goes, thinking about it, no, I don't want to explain it 3 times. You can giggle. You can giggle. Oh.